What's going on, my Eason, and welcome back to another video. And today I say we're getting into cities and globalization. So we already know what cities are. We're going to see how globalization is affected by cities, how cities drive globalization, and the connections it makes around the world. I'm going to get started with world cities. So these cities, world series, function at the top of the world's urban hierarchy. So, they're the big cities. And they drive globalization. If you don't remember what globalization is, that's where businesses are interacting with each other around the world. They have influence around the world as well. They communicate through people and places around the world. They have, maybe manufacturing facilities or like headquarters and offices around the world. They may sell their product globally as well. And this means that they have global political and economic influence. So they kind of have the control over economies in other places around the world, not just the companies, but the world cities do. So let's say a world city, Chicago. If the economy goes down in Chicago, there's big issues there. The economy is going to be affected in, let's say, another world city, London, as well. So that's kind of influence they have there. And then political influence, a government that has world cities in it, it's going to be making more policies that go to those world cities that may benefit them more and all that stuff. Now, frequently you will see a variety of financial services, headquarters of multinational organization, globalization, major manufacturing centers, and a cluster of communications. So we see, radio towers, news stations, all that stuff. You see, Fox News in New York City, which is a world city as well. We see things like financial services, Wall Street in New York, headquarters of multinational organizations. I cannot even begin the headquarters of multinational organizations in world cities like Tokyo, Shanghai, London, Paris, all of that stuff. Those are huge world cities that have tons of multinational organizations. And then, of course, major manufacturing centers. We see, factories and stuff. I mean, that's what really created those cities with that industrial revolution. Now let's get into world cities at a global scale of analysis. So here are some world cities around the world. In America, we have Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. Australia has Sydney. Japan is Tokyo. France is Paris. The United Kingdom is London. Those are all examples of global cities, which are also called world cities, by the way. I'm glad you know that. So yeah. They all have major influence on each other and people around the world. If you go to a place like South America, they're going to know these cities, typically, unless they're stupid. But yeah, these cities are widely known around the world. Now, what's a trend we see here on this map? Yes, the trend here is that these world cities are in our core developed countries, stage 5 typically of the demographic transition model, with a few exceptions like here in the Middle East. Now, why is this happening? Well, these world cities have big economies. They have big influence on each other. And these cities have been around forever. I mean, London's been a huge city for hundreds of years. New York's been a huge city for hundreds of years. I mean, God, China has had these cities for hundreds of years. So they've been around for a while. Now, urbanization is very common in our periphery countries. However, they haven't gotten to the economy. They haven't gotten to the point that these world cities have gotten to. So yeah, that's why we see world cities in these developed areas. Now let's get into New York City as a world city. So New York City is probably one of the most widely known world cities besides London and Tokyo. That's right, that's my other microphone bouncing against the other one, the one I'm using. Anyways, here we have two street signs. We see Broadway. Broadway has its art performances, theatrical, all of that cool stuff. And art around the world influences Broadway productions. So, not just theater around the world. So we may see, more African American or Greek style performances in Broadway. We may see more modern American. We may see more historical American, Hamilton. But all of that, we see that influence on Broadway theaters. And of course, Broadway theater influences people around the world as well, influences art around the world, more globalization. So yeah, that's a good part of a world city of New York. And then here we see Wall Street. That's a big financial institute. We see stocks. We see a bunch of people exchanging money and all of that, investments and stuff. If the stock market and Wall Street have big issues, the whole world's going to go down. And it's going to be highly affected. I mean, we saw this in 2008, not necessarily with Wall Street, but with the economy going down because of that interdependence around the world. And New York City is such a big world city. It's going to have such an influence on the world. And Wall Street has gotten so big that it does that. Now let's get to the connection of cities. We already talked about that with New York. We already talked about that with Worldcities. So cities are connected globally by networks, linkages, and immediate global processes. And I copied and pasted this from the course and exam description. So linkages, I don't even know if I spelled that right. Linkages. That's funny. Now this basically means, in simple terms, that globalization connects the cities of the world and everyone in the world is affected. Everyone's affected. You could be in a periphery country. You could be in Chad. You could be in Norway. You're going to be affected by this. Let's see what is some New York City connections. Badoosh. Alright, here we go. This is from Queens, which is a borough in New York. What are the 5 boroughs? So let's see here. We have bus systems. We see the automobile. Big American buses and automobiles. We see the postal system. We see English, which is a highly spoken language around the world. It's one of the big lingua francas. We see here, I believe that's Mandarin as well. So we see Chinese influence. I could see a lot of Chinese, I don't want to say Chinese, I want to be I see a lot of Asian Americans. I see a lot of actually Hispanic Americans, African Americans as well in here. So we see a lot of diversity in here. Diversity with language, diversity in material culture, diversity in just race, people who live here, ethnicity, all of that. So we see diversity around the world. We see people from around the world live in these cities, maybe to create businesses or for jobs for a business that's based in another city or stuff like that. So yeah, that's something we kind of see here in New York City. And let's get into the diffusion of rap. So it started in New York City. Very, very cool. That's a world city. And then since New York City has such a big influence on the world because it's a world series, it's diffused worldwide. I know this map is not at a global scale of analysis. It's at regional. But bear with me with this. Of course, we see this around United States. But look at Europe. Europe has a ton of world cities as well. So it's going to have a lot of influence. Look at Africa. Africa doesn't have many world cities. So it doesn't have that many influence as well. However, it still has influence. And we see rap around the world, and it diffused through reverse hierarchical diffusion. If you need help with diffusion, I'm going to have a card above video with my diffusion video for AP Human Geography. But that's just an example of diffusion from world cities and the connection it has with around the world. And that if something's created there, it's bound to be known around the world. You will not die silent there. And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really does help me out. And it's free. Join my Discord server. The link's in the description down below. Leave a comment with criticism. I love criticism. I got more AP Human videos. If you want to check them out, I got nothing else for y'all. So adios.